Just wanted to reflect briefly on that first reading from the prophet Isaiah, where we read in part, "The foreigners who joined themselves to the Lord, them I will bring to my holy mountain and make joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be acceptable on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples." Again, it's important to understand that that comes from the Old Testament. It is a prophecy because the Old Testament is God entering into a covenant with just a particular people, his chosen people, the Israelites. Although already, even in the Old Testament, like today's first reading, we also hear God prophesying of a day that will come when all people will be invited to his house of prayer. That is fulfilled in the Catholic Church. When Christ came, it became a sudden invitation to all people, as we hear in the gospel foreshadowing today as well. St. Paul grasped that invitation in reality arguably quicker than anyone, as he describes himself in today's second reading as an apostle to the Gentiles. So Paul was this radical Jewish person, but yet once he experiences his conversion, he has a hard time talking with and converting the Israelite people, his own people. And so he says in the second reading today that he found much greater success and considered himself an apostle to the non-Jewish people. And indeed, those were the people who were most willing to hear the good news that suddenly what had just been exclusively a Jewish thing was being extended to all people. The only solution to the tribalism that is plaguing our country for the last several decades is, for a lot of people, the last place that they would expect. It is the Catholic Church. Catholic means universal or open to all people. There are three things that are foreshadowed in that first reading, prophesied, that are fulfilled right here in our church this morning. First of all, this house is a house of prayer for all peoples. The sign out on Alabama Street says exactly that. All are welcome to come in and pray here. Secondly, all people have now been gathered and summoned here. And finally, thirdly, our sacrifice at this Mass, which is Christ, is acceptable on this altar. Finally, I would just note that over the last 2,000 years, somewhere in the world, pretty much every Sunday, people have lost their lives for coming to Mass. St. Paul himself led the very first persecution of the Catholic Church, followed by maniac emperors, communists, threatened religions, etc., have all at various times persecuted the Catholic faith. And we are not without blood either, but I think the historical record is a clear indication that we have been the receiving end of much more persecution than we have dished out. My point is that people have regularly laid down their lives to come to Mass. The ideal is that the Mass is surrounded with as much beauty and music and incense and chanting as possible. But Mass was said in hiding in Elizabethan England, one family at a time, in hushed voices, and people got Mass maybe once a year. The same for communist China and so many other places today and throughout the history of the world. I think that we do well to consider ourselves blessed to be able to be here today, as I know all of you do. The prophecies of the Old Testament, the sacrifices of the Old Testament, are fulfilled here this morning. No matter how much singing we do or don't do, no matter how much fellowship we have or don't have, Catholics for 2,000 years have been called to recognize the fulfillment here of Isaiah's prophecy, and we should in turn go out and invite others home as well.